Sure. So thanks a lot, Marty. Good to meet everyone. So just a little bit about me. I'm an engineer by training. I built and shipped enterprise products at large companies and early stage startups. While I was still working at my third startup, I got to work very closely with the investors, and I started realizing a need to have an investor that has a sort of a balanced mix of business and technology. um, there's a lot of founders who come from very strong technical background, but not a lot of technology you know sees the light of the day. So you really need investors to pick the right technology and the founders. So I went back to school. I did my MBA. I moved on the venture side. So I'm currently at a early stage venture firm, 11 to Capital. It's $100 million seed. Previous to this, I was a director of strategy and investments at VMware. I was there for about 6 years, and I built products at Sun Microsystem and a couple of startups. When I'm not working, I like pizza making, cooking, outdoors, watching Netflix, Prime, all of that. So let me just dive into cybersecurity. So why invest in cybersecurity? So a lot has changed in the last few years. So across all industries, companies are digitizing. So when I talk about digitizing, everybody is creating data. So once you create a lot of data, so the data becomes like a honeypot for hackers to steal the data. And if you look at consumer companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, they're literally data collectors. They're just collecting as much data as they can from the consumers to sell them ads and products, right? So again, that becomes like a big honeypot for hackers to come and steal it. The second thing that has happened in the last few years is the rise of nation states. So states like Russia, Iran, they're actually legally sort of harboring the hackers. They're providing them the tools to go and hack US and some of the other countries. And we just chatted about crypto and Bitcoin, and unfortunately, those tools are actually helping the hackers because it's so easy to get paid right now in crypto. The third thing that has changed is there's a seismic shift in the security posture. So previously you had, offices where all of the employees work through offices, or you had a data center. Now, all of the employees, they're working from home, and a lot of companies are using SaaS and cloud. So the whole sort of threat model has become more distributed compared to what used to be like a data center centric model. So this is just an infographic of all of the breaches that has happened, and as you can see, as the data sort of grows, the breach actually keeps on becoming bigger and bigger, and we could expect this becoming a lot more bigger in the next 5 to 10 years. Is cybersecurity really a priority? So this is a survey done by Gartner with all of the CIOs. So as you can see, like more than 50%, about 66% actually plan to increase spending. And as you can see, like, across all of their priorities like machine learning and SaaS and data, cybersecurity actually is the number one priority right now. So the White House has also gotten into this recently. There have been some high-profile hacks. You must have heard of this Colonial Pipeline, where the gas supply was shut down on the East Coast. So Biden has issued this executive order to increase the amount of spending on cybersecurity. So out of the 1.2 trillion infrastructure budget, about 2 billion actually is set aside for security. But I think that 2 billion is just the tip of the iceberg, because it's going to increase a lot of spending down the supply chain with contractors and vendors. So this is very, very good news for cybersecurity. So if you are an investor or an LP, why should you invest in cybersecurity compared to other areas like, SaaS or like crypto? So one unique thing about cybersecurity, it's a very evergreen industry. So the threat landscapes keep changing like almost on a yearly basis. So every year there's sort of a new threat vector. 1 year is sort of phishing, the other year it's sort of some sort of a ransomware attack. So you need newer and newer tools every year. So the customers are literally buying newer and newer tools every year to keep up. The second one is the exit multiples. So historically, this has been a very high returns industry. So if you make like a $5 to $10 million early stage investment, let us say they raise $10 to $15 million and they get to like a few million in revenue, that company can exit for like $150 to $300 million very easily, right? So that's like a 10 to 15x easy, like guaranteed returns. And if the company goes public, that's even more. And M&A is very rampant in this industry. Like multiple companies can exit. Every incumbent is trying to grab the next shiny tool to sell to their customers. And on the capital side, this is an industry where the product actually sells itself. Like, so you don't need to spend a lot of go-to-market capital compared to like what you'd spend in SaaS or consumer. If your product is good, the customers will just buy it through word of mouth, right? So it's a very capital efficient industry. So this just shows the public market performance. So on the right side, you can see like some of the high growth cybersecurity companies that are trading up to 34x revenue. So it's almost sort of 5x what an S&P 500 can trade. So even like a medium growth company is trading 2x that of S&P. So there's just a very high demand for the cybersecurity companies in the public market. And that has shown. So 10 years ago, a lot of companies would build a product and they'll sell themselves to larger incumbents. So very few companies used to go public. But in the last 10 years, we are seeing a lot of companies actually go public. So that 150 to 300 multiple exit that I talked about has now ballooned up to $5 to $10 billion when they go public, because there's just a lot of demand in the public markets. So on the right side, you can see that the multiples have really gone through the roof. So last year, they stood, the max was about 30x. Now they're trading up to like 50, 60x. So these are some of the publicly traded companies. The largest company right now is CrowdStrike. That's about 60 billion in market cap. And a bunch of these companies, these are all companies that have gone public in the last few years, like with Zscaler and SentinelOne. They're trading about $10 billion. So how big is the market? About 150 billion in spending every year, like roughly half in software and half in services. In terms of comparing with your broad enterprise software market, so cybersecurity is about 15% of the market. It's still very early, actually. I think this market is going to grow at least 10x in the next 10 to 15 years. As I mentioned, this is a very fragmented industry. So customers, they prefer best of breed. They prefer point solution. And if you have a good product, actually, you'll eventually do well. So this year actually was very special for cybersecurity. It's almost 18 billion of venture funding that went into this industry this year. So it's almost sort of a 70% increase from last year. Same thing with M&A. We had like a record-breaking 40 billion in transactions, about 160 plus transactions. Cybersecurity is also an industry that is gaining a lot of attention from private equity. So one of the private equity firm like Thoma Bravo, they bought Proofpoint for almost $12 billion, which is sort of unheard for, and they're actually paying premiums in the market. This is not like they're buying companies that are not doing well, but they're actually paying very healthy premium on top of market value and buying these companies because they think that they can exit for a lot more value in future. What are some of the hot areas?
Can we just jump in for 1 second? Can you go back to the prior slide? I just want to emphasize, so the number of deals has gone up, right?
Yes.
So the number of deals has gone up, and the valuations are gone up. One of the big concerns is that valuations are pretty high in cybersecurity. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll come to that. So let's just get into this, right? So this is the valuation chart. So on the early stage, like where I focus on, like seed is pretty flat. It's going up a bit, but it used to be like 10 to 15. It's going up to 30 right now. The Series A, definitely they're going up. They used to be like 20, 30. They're going up to 100. But where I think what Marty is referring is to the late stage. So that valuation is just gone through the roof. You can literally see a hockey stick. So you can see like Series B companies right now, they're getting valued at billion plus valuation. Again, I think I don't want to comment on whether the valuation is makes sense or not, but there's a healthy sort of demand from investors, and some of these investors are not your traditional VC investor. These are investors from crossover funds, hedge funds, but they think that a lot of these companies will eventually go public. These are in strategic markets. That's why they are paying very high premiums right now.
Keep it going. We got 5 minutes.
Yeah. So which segments are hot right now? So this cloud security and identity, these two segments are very, very hot. So like Lacework, they raised 1.3 billion in venture funding. Actually, this is not an IPO. They actually raised a Series E 1.3 billion just a couple of months ago. And most of these companies are just raising like hundreds of millions of dollars like every few months. So this sector is so this sector actually is very interesting because cloud is still early. We have a long way in, and most investors think that there will be multiple winners in this. So some of these companies will actually go public at like 40, 50, 60 billion valuation. So they are doubling and tripling down on the winners. The same thing with identity. So identity is becoming very, very critical because it's sort of the weakest link, right? You steal somebody's password, you get in, you can steal the data. So there's a lot of funding in identity. The third sector is on the developer and data again, new tools to protect the data. So I talked about this one. My last slide is like, if you're an LP or GP interested in cybersecurity, what should you do? So my advice here is, this is a very specialized industry. You need to know like what the industry is. You need to know the products. You need to talk the same language with the founders. So if you want to invest in this sector, definitely recommend finding a specialist, right? Somebody who has built products, sold products, or even used the product, like a former CISO. And I see that becoming very popular. Like a lot of CISOs are becoming investors now. And it's very difficult to actually figure out one company versus another unless you know the domain expertise, right? So definitely recommend partnering with somebody who's a specialist. This is also a space where on the paper or on the deck you might see the same product, but a good product and a good team is 10 to 20x more valuable than the others, because customers tend to buy the best product, best of breed product. So you need to actually invest in the right team and the right product. So this is not a space where you could like invest in like a number 2 or number 3 player. You need to invest in the number 1 player. So definitely recommend, that's what you see, like investors paying a lot of premium to get into the right companies. And lastly, I would not be able to do justice if I don't reference Israel. So Israel is like a hotbed for cybersecurity startups. You still see a lot of those startups coming out of there. If you're a US-based investors, definitely recommend partnering or having somebody on the ground in Israel, because some of these deals actually they go so fast, like within hours and days. So you need somebody out there on the ground to get in the middle of the action.